Are we rolling?
Yeah.
We're happy. Hi, this is Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, and
Chrissy Steele.
I'm looking down the front of her dress, but not so she
Don't
noticed.
dare!
But you are watching VidMag television. I too will be watching VidMag television if I wasn't so otherwise distracted. Anything else from you, Chrissy, on that subject?
You said it all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
That was good.
This is Jeff Redding from VidMag Television. We're with Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. Ian, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, sir,
That is a firm and dry handshake, young man. That's the kind I like, not like these wet fish that sometimes people thrust at me. Out of the hundreds of people I have to shake hands with every day, I get some guys who produce this sort of wet slabs of meat or fish from their pockets attached to their wrists and expect me to grapple with it and fondle it, you know.
Okay, Catfish Rising, speaking of fish. This is your 18th studio album, your 25th overall, give or take one or two here and there, in a 23-year career. Pretty prolific.
There's not a lot else to say, is there, after that? Yeah, it's, we are in our twilight years, if that's what you mean.
Actually, I didn't mean that at all.
No, well, that is what I mean. Realistically, we have, I suppose, somewhere like 5 to 10 years to go before it's going to be more than a little obscene doing what we do now. I mean, as a moderately fit 44-year-old, I can probably just about. I mean, if you read the reviews, well, apart from one bad one I had. No, if I go back over the last 6 weeks, there have been 2 bad reviews, and boy, were they bad. But
specifically from the new album?
No, one in Hanover, where they really dwelt on my hairline, which was a bit unfair, but there you go. And another one in Portland, in Maine, where unfortunately I was seriously with laryngitis, but nonetheless I deservedly got a slating for not being able to sing. Although I did have medical reasons for that particular affliction at the time. But no, I mean 2 bad reviews. The rest of the reviews, if you believe them, then we're nearly as good as we all have been. And I can be nearly as good as I have always been, provided I look after myself and, generally speaking, don't try to be 18 again. Mm-hmm. Although there is this absurdity. If you think about Jethro Tull's entree into American live music, it was, as far as most people are concerned, would have been as a support band to Led Zeppelin back in 1960, well, maybe 70. Or latter part of 69, and it was their first arena tour, mm-hmm. and obviously the group was hugely popular, and they were the latest, greatest, biggest thing out of the UK, and we were their opening act. We went up for 35 minutes and went crazy, and back in those days people arrived at 8 o'clock for an 8 o'clock show and were interested in the support act, mm-hmm. and so we got a lot of attention and we did pretty well, and for 35 minutes, even now for 35 minutes, I can make it look and sound pretty good, in terms of energy and whatever, because you only had to play about 4 songs.
Well, especially your songs, because they have that
well, that's right. I mean,
great ability to expand them.
35 minutes is a doddle, but of course the difference is now people expect 2 hours of music, or a little more than that in Europe, where we don't use a support act. And for 2 hours, you have to sustain something that is interesting, that has the light and shade, the ups and downs, and, is physical and yet sensitive, because mm-hmm. we are obviously something of an eclectic kind of a band with a lot of influences and a lot of moods within the music. So you can't go too crazy all the time if in the next verse you have to go to whisper quiet acoustic sections, where the nuances vocally and instrumentally are something that you really have to have a clear head and clear ears for. Mm-hmm. So it is difficult what we do. And I wouldn't pretend to think that I can do it for too much longer. Maybe another 5-10 years we might make it, but by the time I'm 50, I'm going to have to start seriously questioning, is this any longer a pretty sight? And indeed, there are those who may say no, and it hasn't been for the last days either.
university, where men are men, with both those beams and climb again. Still monkey.
You get older, you're not going to look that great anymore.
As many people who are fans of favorite Stones guitarist might say now.
But you see, Keith, he's different. He can go on forever because he already, I mean, he's been looking like an inch away from death, you know.
For the past
For
15
all
years.
of my career, yeah, sure. Listen, I mean, but he's totally plausible because he is just this kind of aging, kind of line guy. But then, you know, that's a different role. It's like Pink Floyd, you know. I mean, that is a band that, because of the lack of individual identity of the musicians, then nothing is really expected of them in terms of animation. They just get up there and they quietly get on with the job of playing the music, whilst the theatricality of the sound, all the effects visually and sound, all the rest of it
Carries everything
give
else.
you your entertainment quotient. So
Plus, they also don't jump around stage either, so they are another group that can continue
they've
on
got
for
no
so long.
excuse for playing wrong notes. At least if I play wrong notes, I say, oh well, I was, you know, sort of three
Bouncing here and there. Right. Let's talk about your roots. So you've got some pretty solid blues roots back in the old days and everything. Your first group was the Blades, and through a couple of lineup changes and a couple of name changes and things like that. The This Was album was originally more or less a blues album, which came out around a time that was the thing going on big time in England.
Well, it was in England, in the blues clubs, yes, in the south of England. That was what was the most exciting development. But it was exciting really only for a fairly short period of time, because, I mean, blues, as we knew it, and I think still know it, based around usually a 12-bar format, I mean a 3-chord trick, with a lot of improvisation. It's great fun to do. And we do actually play in one little brief piece of what we do on stage tonight. We actually played a 12-hour, you know, just a typical little bluesy thing, you know, guitar, bass, and harmonica, and it's a fun little thing to play for a minute and a half. But any more than that, and we'd be kind of, you know, we went round into another chorus of it, we're thinking, you know, be looking for that 4th chord or more. So it didn't really have a lot of staying power as a music form, but it was a great jumping off point in terms of learning to play your instrument, learning the feel of and the emotion of where that music was and where it came from. And in my case, I mean, I went back to listen to all the old guys. When I was 16 years old, I mean, I was listening to Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and all of that sort of stuff, and that was, you know, a profound musical influence for me. And it's interesting that back then, as a young teenage listener, it never occurred to me that the people whose music I followed and who, as musicians and singers, I idolized, that they were A, black people, and B, old enough to be my grandfather, let alone my father. And this just didn't seem to matter, you know. And I try to keep that in my mind when sometimes, from my vantage point at the front of the stage, I look down and see some 16-year-old girl in the front looking up at me, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know, my daughter's just kind of nearly this age, and it starts to feel a little strange when you do find that age differential between yourself and your audience. But you just have to go along with that piece of myth that you create, you know, that age is for a moment unimportant, that there is something passes between you in that communicative sense that music can provide, and particularly in live performance, that you know, it means it doesn't matter how old you are. And if you get a wink from some little girl in the front row, for that moment she means it.
Right.
But if you pass on the street and say, "Hi, little girl, how are you?" she's going to scream, you know, "Right!" you know.
the dark of the city, backwoods something stirs, then slips away. Law and order in darkest nights, bridge crime and punishment and play. Yeah, Mr. Policeman, won't you come on over? Hook me up to the power lines of your love. Jump starts, tow me away. Jump starts, tow me away. Through the forest machinery, the smoking haze of industry. Another day with ball and chain, I do my time and home again. Yeah, Mrs. Maggie, won't you come on over? Hook me up to the power lines on your love. Jump start, tow me away. Jump start, tow me away. Should I blame the officers on me behind? Should blame the priest? Should I blame the poor foot soldier who's left to make the most from these? Hey Jack Ripper, won't you come on over? Hook me up to the power lines on love. Hook me up to the power lines on love. You can blame the newsman talking at you on the satellite TV. If you're fighting for your shipyard, you might as well be blame the sea. Hey, Mr. Weatherman, come on over. Hook me up to the power lines on love. Jump start, tow me away. Jump start, tow me away.
Well, no, that's all the groups, all the lasting groups from around that era, the groups that people are still listening to, the classic rock groups and everything. I mean, they're all steeped in blues. Led Zeppelin, the Stones, the Who, the original Who, the Yardbirds, Cream. All of those groups, I mean, they've got that blues kind of thing. Even a lot of those musicians, what they're doing today, some of them are finally starting to remember that that's where they came from, and they're doing that again. But this is the kind of thing, and even the kids who are growing up now that are finding out about these groups that are still buying the records, and Tull, of course, is another one, that's the kind of music that they're being exposed to a lot and they're picking up on.
Well, indeed it is, and I think even more so in Europe, where the young intelligentsia, I mean, the brighter kids, the ones who are sort of not content with what is the very passive position of young people, hitting MTV, getting all this stuff, or going to the local disco and getting all the dance and rap music and the very fashionable stance that pop music tends to have. Those who look a little beyond that are not finding too much of interest amongst the current crop of new acts, which is understandable because the current musical climate, in terms of record company pressures, A&R men, the commercial reality of modern music means that no one's got too much time to take a risk on bands that are being too inventive or creative or exploring the sort of the further reaches. It's you really got to play it to the formula that's the proven commercial viable one. So it's hard for younger bands, but notwithstanding that, there's still a dearth of new real talent compared to the period in the late 60s and early 70s that spawned many groups, some of whom are still around today. And I find it, my son's school, for example, which is 12 to 18-year-olds, the overwhelming choice of listening is Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd. That's the stuff those kids are listening to. And they're not really listening to any of the current new things because they have disdain for that because it's a kind of transient, fashionable thing.
It's a total
They're looking for
throwaway.
something that they seem to see some fundamental, staying power with, something that really is solid and reliable. I mean, my son, again, is in a rock band at school. And the first performance they gave, I saw a video of it. I wouldn't embarrass him by turning up in person, but I saw a video of it, and the first song they played, began with he plays the drums, playing the cowbell. I thought, God, what's this going to be? And it turned out to be All Right Now by Free. I'm thinking, how does he know that song? I don't have that, and yet it's from the same era as when we first began, and this is what these kids have, it's like the first thing they learn to play, and that's astonishing because I haven't pushed him down that route, I don't push him down any musical route. I have little to do with him and his music because he's just got to find that for himself. But it's astounding that that's their chosen piece of material to work with, in terms of learning the job of playing live music.
Well, again, it goes back to that whole thing about this is the music that is staying. This is the music that's as viable today as it was 20 years ago when it was recorded.
And that's right. And the really hard thing to do is to write songs that are as good as All Right Now by Free in the 1990s, because most of those fundamental, gutsy, simple, direct things, most of them have been done. Really, if you're going to try to recreate a lot of that stuff, you are going to be guilty, to some extent, of plagiarism.
Oh, sure.
So it's very, very hard to come up with new ideas that sound new, are new, and yet still have that direct simplicity and cut right through in that very instant way that some of that music did. In other words, it's got to be commercial. It's got to have instant appeal to people. First or the second time they hear it, they're going to go, yeah, I like that. It's easy for me to sit down and write 10-minute songs that are really complex and may take you 20 plays before you're kind of really into it. That's easy stuff to do, but it's very hard for me to write a 3.5-minute song that's going to, 2 plays into its relationship with you, you're going to say, hey, that's a great track.
town. She fillets her soul and washes it down with sparkling wine. A nice girl, but a bad girl's better. Qualifies in both ways, to my mind. But now she's kissing Willie. She shows her leg, shows it damn well. Knows how to drive a man right back to being a child. Well, she's a nice girl, but her bad girl's better. I can read it in her cheating eyes and know that in a while, well, she'll be kissing Willie, my best friend Willie. Willie stands and Willie falls. Willie hangs his head behind gray factory walls. Well, she's a nice girl, but her bad girl's better. Me and Willie just can't help coming when she calls. Oh, now she's kissing Willie, my best friend Willie. Kissing Willie, kissing Willie. Kissing Willie, 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 kissing Willie, best friend Willie, kissing Willie, 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 kissing Willie, kissing Willie.
You were one of the first groups to do the concept album idea. You've got two of them, Thick as a Brick and Passion Play, both, which are basically one song. And broken down into movements, yes, but still to be able to do that.
Well, no, that isn't the difficult stuff. Thick as a Brick actually, to rehearse and record took less time than doing the album cover. We actually spent, John Evans, Jeffrey Hammond, myself, and a guy from Chrysalis Records who was helping out with the layout. It took as long as to do the album cover as it did to make the record, because the record was very quick. We went in, I'd go in every morning with some new ideas that we would add into what we had already been rehearsing and working on. And we rehearsed, worked on the whole piece as a complete entity before we went in to record it. So it was worked out really as a very performable piece of music, and one in which all the members of the band put in their ideas and so on. And Passion Play kind of followed a similar idea, but as a way of working, I don't think that would be really workable today. We would end up with something that would be just so self-indulgent and so crazy and so lacking in a singular direction. That it's we've all heard too much. We're all too aware of too many different things. If we all try to do that today, we'd end up with such a fragmented, crazy thing. It would be. Back then, we tended to have simpler musical ideas because we were younger, we were more naive, and our ideas slightly different from each other's, but we would still be able to put those ideas, channel them down one way. Now we are too sophisticated. We, as musicians in this band, and possibly you and others as members of an audience, you can't ever go back and pick up that naivety again that you had as a young listener when you hear this stuff for the first time. Your ears and your brain, you develop a more sophisticated view towards music, which should make it possible for you to listen to the 10-minute songs and enjoy them eventually. And that's what I enjoy writing. I mean, for me, somewhere between 6 and 10 minutes is a great time to take an idea, to build upon it, develop it, introduce some new ideas, and recapitulate something earlier and make a variation on this, and make it into a nice sort of comfortable length that feels great to me, also in a performance sense, to do a piece that's 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes long. But for a lot of people, it is just too long. They're halfway through the thing. When's he going to tell us another joke?
Aqualung was another one that was very similar. I mean, it wasn't.
I have to tell you, I'm very worried. We're only 4 lines down.
Yeah, I know.
This whole page,
It's quite all right. Okay. Aqualung was another one that was kind of like that, although it was split up into 2 sides. It seemed like each side was a concept in itself, and yet everything sort of tied together in a way. Now, I've read that this was more or less your views on religion at the time. The second side seems to reflect that more so, being subtitled My God.
Yeah.
But that whole attitude, I guess.
I just have to say that Aqualung really was never designed to be a concept album. It was a collection of songs. The songs, and there were maybe 3 or 4 songs that were fairly closely tied lyrically into that sort of rather questioning, that adolescent questioning of the value of organized religion, that sort of a theme. They were about that. But the other songs had nothing whatsoever to do with that at all. They were just kind of crazy little vignettes of this or that or whatever. Musical nursery rhymes almost. But when the album was finished, I mean, it had to be organized, as always, into 2 sides of vinyl, since we didn't have CD back then, and into album artwork. You had to come up with ideas and a way of putting it across. And I, in terms of organizing things, gave it a little bit of a flavor by, giving the 2 sides some identity and tying the thing together with an album cover that suggested some unity, something that bound the songs together loosely, which indeed an album is. By virtue of the fact you have isolated a group of songs on a particular record, they have to learn to speak to each other. But it was, for some reason, people picked up on it, and I think it was just the fad of the day. People were kind of waiting for concept albums to burst out of the ether, and so the reviewers and journalists saw this as a concept album, more so than anything else, because I wrote some rather bombastic bit of blurb on it, about something about blah blah blah, God created Aqualung, or blah 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 blah. I mean, whatever it was, I can't remember. But it was really rather silly, and it was meant to be a bit tongue in cheek, But the people took this very seriously. Concept album. I mean, I remember saying back then, no, it's not a concept album, but nobody listened. They still think it's a concept album, and it really wasn't. It's a bunch of songs. And after Passion Play, the next thing up was War Charts, just a bunch of songs, and that's more or less the way it always is. Although, with Songs from the Wood as an album, there are songs that kind of go down a certain, they have a feel about them, they join together in a certain way, but it's still not a concept album. It's just, it has a feel about it. Our new album has an overall feel about it. It's a more bluesy, you hear more acoustic and traditional sort of instruments, but usually in a kind of more or less rock group setting, but it's got a bluesy feel without it being the blues. Chordally, harmonically, melodically, it's more evolved than what I know as the blues that got me going in the first place. But nonetheless, that's the feel of it. But it's still not a concept album.
Thank you very much. Back in 1984, we had a visit from drummer Doane Perry, who attended his audition in London. And Doane, as some of you may know, is an enthusiastic eater, as well as a wearer of silly suits. Yes, the only thick as a brick suit in the entire known cosmos. And Doane, apart from passing his audition with flying colours, gave a splendid imitation at the Indian restaurant of a very hungry hippopotamus, ravenously consuming not only every chicken vindaloo in sight, but consuming with eyes alone a very beautiful serving girl of Indian extraction, one with the red dot in the middle, a red dot that clearly meant, no go, Jimmy, it's not your night tonight. But Doan gave it a good attempt anyway, but we only have the memory of the song, sadly. This is called Like a Tall, Thin Girl. Right side.
In smart restaurants, I'd rather do than the low takeaways what I want. I went down to the old Bengal, having telephone retreat. When I saw her framed on the kitchen door, she looked enough to eat, and I mean eat. She was a tall, thin girl. She looked like a tall, thin girl. Said, whose is this carry out? My face turned chilly red. Well, I don't know about carrying out. It didn't carry me up to bed. And I mean bed. She was a tall, thin girl. She looked like a tall, thin girl. Could I fetch for it? Maybe I can stretch for it. I may not be a fat man, and I'm not exactly small, but it all comes down to understand the ground. This girl is tall, and I mean tall. Don't play no tambourine, but his madras hard on the bongo chart. It'll know just what I mean. Stands 6'3" in his underwear. Gonna get him down here and see if this good lady's got a little sister about the same size as me. Yeah, she was a tall, thin girl. She looked like a tall, thin girl. Could I fetch for it? Maybe I can stretch for it. You am I up for it? Do I have to go down for it? Right?
When most people think of Jethro Tull, the first person song that they think of is Aqualung for the most part.
Sure.
That's the one that gets the biggest.
Okay, and you know that's not a bad epitaph. You know, as a very intensely humanist sort of a song.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with that. One of the great Sanderses in my life, he said, threatening to wind up the interview and now launch full tilt on a new angle here. One of the great Sanderses in my life is that Jimi Hendrix, who again had some really great timeless music that he did, fell out of love with his own music. At the point where I kind of went through a crisis of, God, I've got to play that song again, you know, and the repetition of concert after concert and all the rest of it. And I went through that and learned to really think, wait a minute, this is not a millstone around my neck.
Mm-hmm.
As a piece of music, I'm really lucky to have this stuff to work with, and even luckier because I'm the guy who wrote it and get paid the royalties for writing it as well. I mean, it's a great privileged position to be in, to recognize the good things about your own work, and a great thing to be able to go on and deal with that every night, especially when there's improvisation involved. there are little nuances and subtleties you can bring to the music, so it isn't the same every night. But poor old Jimmy, he went through this terrible crisis where he just couldn't cope with playing Purple Haze and all that stuff anymore. And I mean, we played on the same bill, more at his last major public appearance at the Isle of Wight Festival. And within a few days of that, he was dead. And I saw just the first couple of songs that he played, and thought, oh God, I wish he'd just do what the crowd really wants. But not only that, I wish he could do it and enjoy it. The way I have just enjoyed going on stage and playing My God or whatever I was playing. He never, he just managed to survive that period. I feel that he may have gone through that and come back to have reacquainted himself with all the good things about his work, and that if he'd found that kind of revitalized faith in his own abilities as a musician, his own material to work with, there would have been a few more good songs in him, as well as a lot more good concerts. But unfortunately, he left us at the lowest point of his career, really. When he'd kind of just really lost his way. That was the saddest thing, because I'm sure if he hadn't died that night, somebody would have got to him that would have brought him through that period, and
back up to prominence again.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mark Bowen, who was on his way back when tragedy struck there too.
Yeah, and if I had the option of going on stage tonight here, hopefully to a few thousand people, or going and being the warm-up act for Jimi Hendrix, in a 200-seater club, that's the one I'd go for, tonight.
Okay. Ian Anderson?
Sounds like a cue for a Jimi Hendrix song, doesn't it?
Something like that. Thank you
Okay.
very much, sir. Enjoy the show tonight, as we in Cleveland always do when you play.
Thank you.
And definitely looking forward to it. Thank you, sir.
I said,
We'd like to hear from you. Please write us at VidMag Television, Post Office Box 14007, Cleveland, Ohio 441.